And we're live. Ivan, thank you for coming on the show today. I'm very happy to be next to you and to have you on my show.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for having me here.
So I told you a couple minutes ago now. Is there a little tidbit, little something that the world doesn't know about you from what's out there?
Yeah, I mean, people know the first part of the story, but the second part they don't really know. So I came here when I was 7. And
from Cameroon.
From Cameroon. Had no idea how to speak English. So my parents put me in English speaking school. So every day for the first 2 weeks, I'm like, just think about it. I have no idea what anybody's talking about, right? They're giving us homework. So I'm crying every day and I'm going home. My parents are like, you'll figure it out. And I'm like, no, I will not. But the first day we had gym class, she rolled out like basketball, and I'm kicking it because the main sport over there is soccer, football.
Right.
And the kids are like, no, dribble. And I'm like, nah, I never really seen the basketball, right? So they teaching me, and that's how I started picking up the English language. But fast forward into the real story that nobody probably really knows is I never fit into the American society or culture for a long time, right? And I got to like 6th, 7th grade, and, I was always the weird kid. And I'm like, the only way you fit in is if you actually play basketball. So me getting good at basketball had nothing to do with me caring about basketball. Had everything to do with me trying to fit into this culture and this society. And I literally start from 5th grade to like 9th grade. I just train. I was on the teams, but I was never good. And I started getting better. And then that's when, I started making friends and I started fitting in. I started understanding neighborhoods, like what is that, like what is that whole confinement is like, hanging out with friends. So I use sports as a vessel to be cool. It just happens that I ended up being pretty good at it.
Do you remember when you first came here at 7 years old from Cameroon, what was going through your head? Did you know, what life could be like in the States? Were you nervous? Were you excited?
I was nervous. At 7, people think, I remember actually, it was like a surreal feeling. Everything in Africa, in Cameroon, specifically in Yaoundé where I'm from, totally different than New York. And in New York, so big, I remember the first time it snowed, I cried for like the first 3 days nonstop. I wouldn't go outside. We don't see.
Cried out of fear?
Yeah, I never seen snow. The days just falling from the sky. Like all we seen was the sun. That's it. The sun in, sun out. You start seeing different weathers. I'm starting to wear a jacket. Never wore a jacket before in my life. Like, what is this? But you get accustomed to it. You learn it. And then the foods. You got it.
Yeah.
Everything from back home is like original condiments and everything. You come here, you walk down the street, you got a McDonald's. I remember the first time I had this, I was like, ew. Yeah, I hated it. I hated everything, but you get accustomed to it, right? Luckily, I came in at 7. When you come in like at 14, 15, it's kind of hard because you got your whole way of living set up, right? Like the culture. But at 7, you could kind of get established and reset. My parents did a good job of keeping it balanced at home for us. Yeah.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have 2 younger brothers.
And you guys all came together?
Yeah, no, well, the youngest one wasn't born yet.
Okay.
The middle one was 1, I was 7.
Okay, so you're the oldest.
Yeah, I'm the oldest, yep.
Wow, you the protective big brother?
Yeah, they the knuckleheads. They're actually on their way right now to Phoenix. And I text them, I'm like, listen, make sure you take care of each other.
For the fights?
I don't know what they're going. Oh, one of my youngest brother's good friend plays in the league, so he invited them out there, and they're about to be doing BS, God knows what. And my mom texted me like, I'm so scared. I'm like, they'll be all right.
So at what point did you feel, at what point were you first fluent in English?
No, I learned that year.
How? Oh, it just took a year?
I learned that year.
Wow.
I learned that year really quick.
You're a quick learner.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're around it all the time, right? And then my parents made it a point to try to speak English in the house.
How long did it take you to feel like New York is home, if ever?
Man. That's a question that I probably never had an answer. I consider it where I'm at. I don't think it's like, because it's still a societal gap.
Mm-hmm.
Like my parents are very culture driven in the crib. So You go outside, like for instance, I had friends that used to get Xboxes and PlayStations when they get 76 average in high school. I get an 87. I used to be scared to go home. You know what I mean? So for me, it's tough, but in the sense of I'm comfortable here though. Yeah.
Now, so then you play basketball, and that's like one of the ways in which you kind of first learn English, but also kind of just get integrated into friends and all that, I imagine.
Right.
And then your athletic career goes in a great direction.
Yeah.
Will you kind of tell the masses, a little bit about your life in pro sports before obviously it transitions into the zone, and we'll get into that after.
Right. I mean, I stopped at college, but I didn't get good at it was an interesting story. I didn't get good at basketball till I said like the 10th or 11th grade. 10th grade, coming back to school is, I actually didn't make the team my freshman year in high school.
Where'd you go to high school?
Ohalo's High School.
Okay.
The most dominant freshman team that they lost one game, and I was cool with all the kids. And it was a lesson because the freshman coach was one of my best friend's dad, and we had trained together. But he was like that. He tells me now, he needed to push me mentally. It was like a big backstory, but long story short, I went home that summer and I put in the work, and I came back next year, and I was like, that's one of the first years that I was like, all right, I'm here, and preseason, had a really good preseason. The season was pretty decent, played JV. We did all right. We lost like in the quarters or whatnot. Then going into the next year, that summer was great. I played with Raising Champions. I did a little stint with New Heights and then New Jersey Shore Shots. So I bounced around in teams in a couple tournaments. And it was a really good summer. I went to a lot of top camps, played well, came back my junior year. I got hurt. So that was my first dislocation. I dislocated my patella, missed my whole junior season. So, all right, I get healed that whole year while I have to watch from the sidelines. And then coming back from my junior summer, I had a really good summer. I got invited to academic elite camps to Columbia. Bucknell was recruiting me, New Hampshire. And my high school coach, we've had conversations since then. He didn't understand because there was a lot of guys that he was trying to help in our school currently that weren't getting schools. But, I had a really good summer. And I always knew that when I stepped outside of New York, I played lights out. But when I got back to New York, it was always I don't know what it was. I could never find comfort in my play. And it was a confidence issue that I was battling. That's began the whole mental health aspect for me, right? And I knew. So my senior year, the season starts, and the third practice, coaches on the sideline and whatnot, I don't know what I got. I think I got yelled at for something that I didn't believe in. Me and my coach was already beefing. I walked out of practice, threw my jersey in the middle of the court, walked out. Had to meet with my principal the next day, and he was like, are you kidding? There's college coaches on the side, blah, blah, blah. And for me, I thought it was over because he easily could call those schools and say, hey, he's a nutcase, blah, blah, blah. And he did. And rightfully so. All the D1s gone. Didn't play that whole year. Never went back on the team. And I thought it was over. But my AU coach kind of sent me to a couple mid-year, some camps and stuff. And I had no idea I was going to college because I thought I was going to go for basketball, right? And Division II start calling. And I ended up, I want to stay home. And I ended up at Concordia College, got a scholarship there, and played. My career there started injury. I redshirted my first year, got injured. Again, the beginning of the real freshman year. Sophomore year was okay, was working my body back into it. Junior year, coming into it, I got named co-captain, and it was set to be my first breakout season in a long time. You hear all these injuries in and out. Did put the work in. I had a dominant summer once again. Come back, dominated preseason. First preseason game, got injured. Season over. And that's when I was it took a toll on me because, I'm a 20-some-year-old kid. It's I could never outlive my potential on the court. I never had, besides 1 year in high school, I never had that year, right? And I didn't understand what it was teaching me. I had no idea what I was going through. I started pre-med, and I dropped out. When I got here, I dropped out of pre-med and just went into biology. Really stopped going to classes. My parents are African, so they only care about grades. Luckily, they didn't even know what I was messing up, so I couldn't call didn't get really along with my coaching staff, and the school's a small school, so I didn't know where to go. Just stood in my room, binge drinking, binge watching shows, literally nothing. Go to practice, looking like shit, and I had a conversation with the AD, and then and the trainer, and it was like, we got a sports psychologist that staffed. You should go talk to him, and I went because I was like finally looking for. I was actually looking for a way to outlet it, and I didn't know what I was going through. So I go in there, and it's in a pizza store, Villaggio's. I remember what the pizza shop. You got to go upstairs from it. So I walk upstairs and I look at the guy like face to face, a therapist, and I walk right back down. I was like, I'm not walking in. What am I gonna tell him, right? So after the second time I set the appointment, I walk in and I go talk to him, and he kind of like, the first thing he made me do was like find a spot in the sky and just stare at it for like 5 minutes. And I was like, yo, what the fuck is this? I've never been trained. And I was fidgety. And he was like, you see, you can't sit with your own emotions, your own thoughts, your own self scares you. And we went through like 2-3 months of like steady conversations, and it got me through it. He helped me learn that, I was struggling with self-identity crisis. I was struggling with, low-grade depression, but I had put everything who I was as a human into, my playing basketball. If I couldn't do that, it was over. I didn't know how to face people, face life. So once I learned that, it started to trigger like, how many people actually go through this and don't have no idea? And I'm like, damn, I have friends that see murders every day, and then they using basketball as an outlet, and I start talking to them, and they're like, yo, it's the same. So it's a whole different correlation. So, that's how really the zone really spurred up. But I know you're gonna have your questions. That's the non-glorious basketball career in a nutshell. Could have been better.
So there's obviously a lot of that we'll talk about, but as for what the zone is for people out there, so they're not confused, who aren't familiar with it, will you just kind of briefly describe it so that they can get acquainted?
Right. So the zone is a tele-wellness startup, literally a mobile app that we help kids get more accessible help to mental health, right? So we look at it as mental health increases performance and makes you feel your best, right? So, and it's different for everybody. And we also understand that schools are in a position where they can't hire for every kid, hire every staff member or therapist, right? So how do we position for a kid that's not ready to talk, for a kid that can't afford mental health care? How do we make sure that they have a mobile app in their pockets for whatever they're struggling with, right? And that's the way we kind of look at it, right? So we also, on the other hand, the staff are now able to see the data in aggregate and anonymized. So we give the kid the privacy that they need, but we also help them by helping their staff member understand what they need. So we started with student athletes. That's, has been very home to me. But there's a lot of other things that's in the works, right? When you think about everybody, the mental health has no off season.
So say you're a kid who's in 10th or 11th grade. Mm-hmm. You download the zone. Mm-hmm. What happens then?
Well, we actually B2B, right? So we, in the early stages of thinking about this is, you got Headspace, you have Calm, kids could go download this, but the younger generation isn't going to download these things because there's so many things competing. You have social media.
When you say the younger generation, who exactly?
So Gen Z. Okay. Gen Z isn't downloading a lot of these apps from the number standpoint, right? So we said, where's the best place that we could start that's not crowded and get a lot of data? And we looked at higher education because they have the money, but then they're also responsible for their kids, right? So what happens is we partner with the school. Like, we're finalizing a partnership. Let me give you a school, Stony Brook. Partner with Stony Brook, that was our first school, and they licensed the app to give to their student athletes, right? Okay. And their student athletes go through an onboarding of the app learning who they are. So what are the different things you go through? Why do you go through these things? What do you think? And it's quickly accessible, right? So it goes to an onboarding flow. Now, after the onboarding flow, it kind of creates a story in a personalized feel versus the content we have in there, because we have partnerships with, mindfulness companies, meditation companies. We also have a wellness committee that's filled with psychologists, neuroscientists, and everybody that can help build a flow and evidence-based program that can help these kids, right? So everything there is thought out, but the person now, in the morning, they go through check-ins. How do you feel today? And if they say they're feeling angry or whatever, things are pushed up to why are you feeling angry? Is it academics? Is it school? Is it physical? So and now it's building a story and it's giving them that emotional intelligence.
Now, so an example like the Stony Brook example. Say I actually have a friend on the Stony Brook soccer team, so shout out to Cameron. So say he's on the app, right?
Right.
He gets up in the morning, he opens up the app, and what is the process of checking in? Like, what is that? Is it just like I click like on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it I'm writing? Like, what is it?
Right. So we know that the Gen Z is very familiar with emojis, right?
Okay.
And tying emojis to feelings. So and communication. So we utilize that literally the simplest way where we got into their pipeline. So now that's the first thing they see is like, how you doing today, right? And they set that tone. It's like, embarrassed or whatever the case may be. They click a mood. Now based off of that, it prompts them why. What's the reason
Do
why?
you have to write?
No. It's clicks. Personal, school, physical. Let's say personal, right? Now it's like, okay, this person's feeling like this because of personal reasons. Well, these are the things that can help you. These are the things that your other cohort are utilizing to help them. So now we're pushing the content. Or is this something that you want to talk to somebody about, right? Because beforehand, they had to go online, schedule appointments with a therapist, and now that person...
Right.
100 people are scheduling, but now we're creating a chat bot in between that. So now they can have like a conversation with somebody and that can get them through it before they go talk to this.
So just to understand fully, so after they answer like a few different things here and there, this I feel, when you say the content, or like the list, like the
resources.
The list of resources, what are those kinds of resources?
Right, meditation. It could be meditation, it could be educational, right? It could be breathing exercises.
Okay.
It could be based off whatever you click, there's tags for specific things, right? Financial could be your reason. And we're finalizing a partnership with a big company to be our financial wellness partner, right? So wellness is not tied to just, I have anxiety, right? It's many different factors, especially when you talk about a kid in college that's causing them to be stressed out. Right. So for every kid that's going through anything, we have specific content in there to help them get through whatever they're going through.
Okay. And how have you noticed, at least thus far, actually even before that, how many schools have used this so far?
Right.
That you guys are in partnerships with?
Right. So we started literally, I'm going to backtrack because I think it leads better into the story. So at 24, I started an events company around...
And you're 29 now.
I'm 29.
Yes.
24, I started an events company around student athletes, younger student athletes. When you talk about younger, 10 to about 17, struggling with identity crisis and trying to help them. But it was themed around basketball camps. And I grew that business to we grew that business about 50 to 75K a year for the first 2 years, right? Okay. And I got into Columbia. After getting into Columbia, one of my professors helped me see the bigger picture and the idea that I had, and we scaled it out. So September 23rd, 2019 is when, me and my partner Eric was on the rooftop and we started to ideate. And from then on, this past December, we launched the first pilot with Stony Brook. Since then, we've been piloting with Stony Brook, Lehigh, Memphis University, NJIT, FAMU, there's a plethora of schools. And then also now, the pilot we wanted to test data. So the pilot, we gave it out for free to really learn what was right, what wasn't right. Was our thought process right? Was our thesis right? And our thesis came out right? And we knew that if this came out right, this is the product we was going to design. So now we're striking these longer term deals with the school and more schools that I told you, that we're finalizing all these 3-year deals to go into the future. But the new product won't be launched until the September because now we're building out based off that thesis and the testing processes that we was correct. And we was correct basically on the fact that based off of what they go through, kids don't want to have to search. Like young men and women don't want to have to search on I have to go here and find this out. They want things quicker, right? Mm-hmm. The average engagement when you talk about mental wellness apps is 27 minutes a week, right? So that's about give or take 3 to 4 minutes a day. You're not going to get them for an hour. So you have to look at the weekly user rate. So when we looked at our numbers, we're like, after 30 days, the retention is 7.9% in the industry. We was getting anywhere from 9 to 25 on month to month. So I said, okay, this works, and these are the things that work within it. So now let's harp on the bigger picture, and then let's grow this, right? Because what we found out is kids don't understand why they need to meditate. Like, people give them all these meditation, all these stuff, but if they don't know, like, why, how they're feeling and why they're feeling this way, how you gonna get a kid that's from the Bronx, a tough neighborhood, to understand I'm meditating? Nobody's ever told him that. Nobody in his family ever done it, right? But now if you can give him something that's secure for him in his pocket, and he understands, like, oh, damn, look at the trends. These are the reasons why this week I was feeling like this, and oh, it led to my play being like this, or it led to me outbursting like this. Well, we're trying to get you proactive versus just being reactive all the time, and that's why it's a big data play on that end too.
So here's a good example. Say you are that kid that maybe is 16, struggling, maybe with their basketball player. Something is bringing them down, right? You told us exactly the kind of the process that they're going to go through when they open up the app. In that case, how quickly from when they tell you, that with the different emojis or whatever it is, that they're feeling X, Y, and Z, what is like an example of like a meditation, of the meditation content, or maybe of another one of those resources that they're going to be prompted? Is it going to be like an article? Is it going to be I don't know, a podcast? Is it going to, like, what are some of the best solutions that you found that the Zone app is going to recommend for someone who's out there right now who's like, okay, maybe one day I want to download this app and use this as my primary tool to overcome my low.
And everybody's different, right? Some people want audio, some people want video,
right?
And some people want infographics, right? And when we say infographic is, what is anxiety, right? Let's say after 3 days they've been prompted and said that they feel like this. Now we know, okay, this is a red flag, right? Because our therapist and our wellness committee told us that they're heading down a spiral which can lead to overwhelm or burnout or suicide thoughts. So now we get in front of that and we're like, hey, this is what being like this feels 3 days, and it's literally infographic after infographic, and now they'll go through and they'll be educated on what may happen, right? Gotcha. And they give them coping mechanisms, and it's like, okay, think about this. If you're not ready to meditate, these are different things you can do in your own time, right? And now they're getting educated. So we look at it a 3-step process when you think about content. It's not just audio, it's not just video, it's not just infographics, not just articles. It spans, right? But awareness, education, application, that's our process within the platform. How do we make you more aware of what you're actually going through? And now how do we educate you on what it is you're going through? Now when you're educated, which these things can take a long time, how do we make sure that you're applying these things to help you over time? And we have those steps within the app, and we're gonna guide you.
How do you keep someone, especially if it's not like, maybe for the most part, like one-on-one direct, like a therapy session where the benefits, and I love therapy, but definitely one of the benefits of therapy is, whether it's in person or unfortunately during COVID over Zoom, you can't like go on your phone, you can't like dilly-dally, you can't, they hold you accountable. When you're on an app, there's no one there to say, you could be watching TV on the app at the same time, and maybe over time, especially knowing my generation, they just kind of get bored of things. They're lazy. They don't want to do it. Maybe they do it once or twice a week instead of 5 or 6 or 7 times a week. How do you guys keep the, that retention rate that you're talking about? And not just the retention rate, but also like the consistency of having someone not check in once or twice a month, but every single day, hopefully.
Right. Well, something that we're very much thinking about and doing it very smart, because a lot of people have articles about why these apps don't work, and we paid attention to that, right? And when you think about AI, how do we make it not intrusive, but how do we make it fit into the lifestyle of the person? Right? When would you like to meditate? If we call our bot a zone trainer, the zone trainer, your zone trainer, your own wellness coach, right? When would you like to do it, right? Oh, we're looking at trends. So we're like in constant communications where you said that you want to commit to this habit over this month, but you only did it 2 times. Well, this is going to lead to this, right? So now we're kind of not being invasive, but we're letting you guide that kind of story. So we know that that's going to drive more interactive. Now, another thing we're thinking about is community. How do we make wellness something that you can have an accountability person with you, right? A friend, a teammate, and hey, I just did my wellness goal of the day, and you can ping them and be like, hey, make sure you get yours done. And now it draws some type of accountability push, right? So those are the two fronts that we're really thinking about to drive that, but that's a tricky portion of it.
Kind of going on that idea, which actually sounds like a great idea in terms of like, oh, like I just did my accountability goal of the day, right? And then you send it to your friend. There's still, obviously everyone wants to talk about the stigma of mental health, and we can talk about that after. But there's also, I think, another stigma of like, after you're past the initial stigma of mental health, of like, there's probably a stigma, or I'm thinking about it more in my perspective, is I don't know if we're at a point yet in history where even if you and I can talk about, maybe not you, but like me and a friend can talk about how important mental health is, I don't think enough people are yet at the point where they'd be willing to, send to their friend like, hey, did you do your mental health accountability goal? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How do you think maybe as a society, and also you as someone who's kind of trying to target some of those people, to make it more normal to check in on your friend and say, hey, like, I just did my accountability goal of the day. Like, have you done yours?
Right. I think, and that's why talking to the team about everything that we talk about before it goes in app is everything has to be out of app, right? And how we educating our consumer? How we educating our schools on what it is? Because everybody has this notion of expecting like this. More people in the population have no idea how important it is versus not until it hits them or it hits a friend, right? So I think when we're still reactive, we will still be reactive for the next 2 to 5 years, I believe, right? But that doesn't mean that solutions don't need to be in the forefront, because you don't know when it hits, who it hits, and why it hits. Conversations, right? Things like Brandon Marshall was doing with I Am Athlete. Things, Dak Prescott, Naomi recently, right? It gets real because it's not fake. It's not like the older generation loves to say, and this is one of the biggest problems. I have these conversations daily. The old generation, when I talk about old generation, boomers, my parents and whatnot, get through it because they just got through and figured out. It wasn't real for them, right? But they didn't live in today's time where things are way much faster, information are sourcing through. There's so much things trying to keep up. The Gen Z is way different than the boomers. So for you now to push the kids that you basically raised and say, hey, get through it, deal with it, or it's not real, or you're soft, or you're punk, or you're just complaining. I had somebody say, hey, Naomi was complaining. I was like, all right, has Naomi ever caused a problem? No. Is Naomi probably the best player, let's put Serena aside, she's a legend, the best up-and-coming player? Yes, she's going to be the face of UTA tennis, right?
Yep.
Do you think that she would want to say, hey, in 2018, if anybody watched the interview, she basically said, hey, I'm going through X and X and X.
Yeah.
And she still did the interview, but then she responded, right? So I'm not even berating the older generation. I'm not. I have these conversations and I let them think about it. So I'm like, okay, so her saying all of this, and then her saying, does she deserve special privileges? No. But what went wrong was the tennis organization should have just reached out to their best player, because Adam Silver would have reached out to LeBron if LeBron said something, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? How can we accommodate this and make it work? No, they didn't. They put out a statement, and guess what? She backed out because she's actually going through something. She backed out in the next tournament.
Yeah.
So now who wins?
Yeah, and just for people out there listening that aren't familiar with that Naomi Osaka situation, it was basically that she was, as I was saying, going through, whatever she was going through mentally, and then didn't want to do press at the French Open, and then got fined for it, and then just said altogether, I'm just going to pull out of it. But I think also, what's also interesting about that situation, and unfortunately, because I think it's the world we live in, I imagine with whatever she's going through right now, she probably wants to just, kind of, and I mean, she's also unbelievably famous, but she'd also love to just kind of be out of the public eye. Mm-hmm. But I think, unfortunately, because of that, she will now get more attention at the future events, which is unfortunate.
I think she's in an interesting spot.
Yeah.
She could impact sports for a long time, because now you're gonna have to really take in consideration the mental health of these upcoming athletes, you know, and it's the first one. Like LeBron did a partnership with Calm, you know, but it was more about mental performance, and people don't even know there's mental wellness, mental health, mental performance, and all the same thing, right? So I think that what she did for herself is powerful. It's very powerful, and it's gonna create that confidence. It's gonna create that ability for, you know, because everybody had to say Serena was going through tougher, and she did interviews. It's true. So do you want to continue doing the same thing over and over and over and over? No, we don't want Naomi to, you know, you want her to get better. We don't, you know, we know what people did to Serena and how they would treat her in interviews, right? We don't want that to continuously happen. So, and I get the media has to do their job. I'm not berating them, but there's a way to do your job.
My other question for you, and this is more of like I'll play devil's advocate for a second, is I 100% agree with you that, and, you know, I see it in my parents, that, you know, a lot of them, when they were younger, there was no such thing as mental health. It was, you know, get through it.
Right.
I think that globally speaking, it is fantastic that there's this new movement about bringing awareness to mental health, how important it is on every single level.
Right.
For our generation, I'll just speak like my particular generation. I think what's also interesting, I think it's going kind of two ways, right? Where we have a part of my generation that is very aware of or we're starting to have the conversations more, which is great. And there's another like fraction, and this is where I'm playing devil's advocate, where it's almost, and a lot of like comedians will joke about it, where some, you know, want to think that their depression or their anxiety or whatever there is their personality, right? Or that, and comedians say it best, that like, I think Mark Norman said it best actually, where some people feel like they're getting points for having depression, anxiety, like as if there's more and more of that, right? From your perspective, I'm kind of interested on what your take on that is. If you feel like that's false, if you feel like that people aren't kind of quote unquote going overboard with it, and if there are any kind of dangers of maybe being sometimes too open about everything that's going on, so that, you know, then it kind of, because for what I think is, what I think personally is the biggest danger, is that being sad for a week doesn't mean in my opinion, doesn't mean you're depressed. Because if I was sad for a week and I knew someone who was legitimately clinically depressed, I feel like it would be disrespectful for me to say I'm depressed when that person is going through it 10 times harder than me and using the same exact word, right? Because and differentiating, I think it's also very important to differentiate sadness and depression, right? Two very different things. So I'm kind of curious to get your take on, you know, if you agree with that, if you think that's outlandish, if you think that, you know, if there are different ways of differentiating this generation, if there are dangers of, you know, being too open about it. I want to hear where your head's at on that.
I think you said a couple things, right? Are there going to be extremists in everything? Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There always is, right? There's always cry for help or push the status to make it about me, right?
Right.
There is a difference between that person that's going to that real clinical depression and somebody that's sad. There's escalation to that, right? But I will say, I don't walk everybody's shoes, right? I don't walk in Felix's shoes. So you're sad. Somebody with clinical depression may be able to get through it better. But if you say, hey, I can't do that because they got deeper, then and you're struggling immensely, but you're trying to outwardly look at somebody else and say, I can't really complain, then you can struggle.
Right.
We can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing. And that's when you talk about our parents, that's the thing that they do. It's a very thing. It's like, you know that I fought in World War, boom. I'm like, yeah, well, that's why you probably beating your kids, or that's why you're letting it out somewhere. That's why you're doing that. That's why you're doing. instead of, finding that escape, right? And that's why I would say, two things could be true, right? There can be an extremist, but then you can't, that moment as a parent, you do that to your kid, or as a friend, you do that to your close friend. And guess what? They're human too, right? And they're gonna be like, all right, cool. And they're not gonna they stop sharing. So the question you asked me before, they stop sharing. Now it's like, all right, stupid. You're right, whatever I'm going through is stupid. And then we just get backwards because it's just gonna continue the cycle. Yes, it gets to a point where it's too much. Like, don't cry, you getting bad grades and say, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. Understand what it is. And that's where the education come in. That's why I talk about awareness, education, and application. Because don't just say, we're not gonna prescribe you away, but based on what you tell us, we have the evidence back to say, hey, this is where you're headed. But before you get headed here, this is what you need to do.
Right.
And we drive up a program, but then we also allow you to create your habits, your own habits. It could be running, it could be whatever that fits in with this, right? So it's not a one-way street. But yeah, to your question, is there's people that just want to self-identify with
Yeah,
these
and
things.
I think that what you said is very well said. I guess the only fear is that those people would cloud the space, for, if you will, but I don't think they will, you know what I mean? I think, because especially something like mental health is like, there's 7 billion people on Earth or 8 billion people on Earth. There's 8 billion people that are going to have mental health. Like, that's just...
It's no off-season. It's
yeah.
Like Kevin Love told you, DeMar DeRozan literally said, I had no idea why I didn't like myself sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, there's a chemical thing that had to do with it, right? And for people listening, I did get my master's in physiology, so I know a thing or two about this stuff before. And I took the MCATs. I was gonna go down the path of med school, but it's a chemical aspect to it. There's definitely a person aspect to it, an environmental aspect to it. Like growing up in the Bronx and growing up in the city, you see opportunity in the city, right? You get a different level of confidence. It's vibrant. You grow up in the Bronx, it's like it could be harder because you see all these buildings look the same and it looks kind of like jail representation. So that motivation might not be what you think. Now, could you be going through something you have no idea? Yes, right? So it's literally just the environmental aspect of it. But then, do you see mental health centers in the Bronx and stuff like that? Is it affordable? Is insurance stepping in on it? There's a lot of things that we could do, right?
So I'm curious, when you created the zone with what's your co-founder's name?
Eric Podro.
And so he's the Beacon alum.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's shout out to Matt who set this up. Who also went to Beacon. I went to Beacon. So Eric went to Beacon.
Correct.
And so how'd you guys kind of come together? And
Eric was a baseball player. He was a captain. Like I was a captain at Concordia. He ended up being a Hall of Famer there, playing a stint of pro baseball. His career ended with a pitch to his eye. We had a conversation because we had a lot of similarities, right? A lot of things that we dealt with, and it bonded.
And so then, what was like the conversation of, okay, are we gonna do this?
So the conversation was for me, it's simple. Most people that know me, I push on my thought process and ideas. Things come to me. It just comes. Like I go on walks. It comes. So when I was doing the camps, I told Eric one time, I was like, yo, come to the camps. There's something that I potentially in the future would like you to be a part of. And he just helped me out with the camps, and it just grew and grew. And then when we pivoted, he was the one that I came to. I was like, yo, listen, I think this is the way we should go. And then we was on his job's rooftop, and that's where the thing went and the conversation went. And it was, with a co-founder, there's a lot of tough conversations you gotta have, right? But we had those. We faced it, and we're like, okay, this works.
What were some of those conversations, of the ones you can?
No, it's fair. I mean, listen, me and him talk about it all the time. It's like, who's gonna make the decisions? Who's gonna drive this? What happens with these shares? What happens when this happens and you don't like it, right? And it's both ways, right? And it's being very hard set on where everybody stands on things and for the goal of the mission. right? How are we helping student athletes' lives get better? That's where the decisions come from. It doesn't come from Ivan's wants or Eric's wants. It comes from that. So when we established that aspect, the conversations became easier, right? Because he doesn't look at me and like, I'm berating him. He looks at it like, okay, I know where he's coming from and I know why, right? And a lot of people, will tell you that I'm tough and I'm hard, but it's just because I care about what we're trying to do. So if you don't care, it's like, get out the way. You know what I mean? And I have respect, but I really, really care. And it's just like, it's a purpose thing for me. Because in my degrees, even an investor asked me recently, hey, why don't you go get a big paying job? Like, you got your physiology degree at Columbia. You also did sports management. You took executive MBA courses. You could go work, do whatever you want. And I'm like, yeah, but this is why I did it. So.
Now, when did you guys officially found the Zone?
Well, before he came in, I founded it with a group of other friends, 2017.
Okay.
That's when the first events ever happened, 2017. And the pivot happened 2019, September 23rd, 2019.
Wow. So it's almost coming up on 2 years.
Coming up on 2 years.
And so how big is the team now?
It's myself, Eric, Janae is leading product. And it's just us three. We got a couple interns. We have board. So our board is like, former founder of Priceline, managing director of cybersecurity at Barclays, former exec at Nike, exec at Hired. So, and then we also got a wellness committee, like I told you, make sure everything that we put in the app is evidence-based. So, the executive team is 3, but then we also got a lot of, between investors and advisory board members that really help us day to day.
Now, so what does your day-to-day look like?
Wow, that's an interesting question. It starts sometimes at 5. I like to try, and it's funny because I still have a part-time gig. I'm a director of human performance at Prime Performance in Larchmont, where most of my investors and board members come from. So I did do all the rehab and the training programs for anybody that come in, before surgery, that want to help themselves get in better shape of their lives. So we create all of that and get them going. So that's one thing. But now, as this goes on, this is going to be, when we decide to dig in the big round of funding, it's going to be full-time. But the day-to-day, sometimes I start there from 5 in the morning, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 5 in the morning to about 12. 12, I go home, and then from 12 to like 4 calls, 4 to about 11, straight work. It could be sales-related work. It could be programming. It could be app development, BD partnerships, talking to our privacy and our legal team, making sure everything is set. Our lead lawyer, making sure the cap table, investors, board members, Eric sync up about, what schools that we're targeting and how's those conversations going to our current schools. So it's a full gamut. Like, I don't have weekends. Yeah. So, but I don't view it as work.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. It's, like I said, it's a purpose. So for me, it just landed in me, and it's like, this is what I got to live out.
Now, from a business model standpoint, I guess the simple question is, how do you guys make money?
The schools. So we charge the schools.
It's like a licensing.
Yeah, schools pay an annual licensing fee for their student athletes. So that's the first kind of way we look at it. And then now, as the features get in app, we'll go from fixed user rate pricing to value-based pricing. Okay. And then as we grow, we have a specific angle that we want to enter and go direct to consumer. So we're basically the first couple of years testing these theses out, student athletes, some banks, and figure it out what works, what doesn't work. And then when we go direct to consumer, we want to really do it the right way. So
right now, like, the average person out there listening can't access the app?
No, not currently.
Okay. But one day, I imagine that's the goal?
2 years. It could be pushed faster, but 2 to 3 years, yes.
Okay. So if I tell you June 2021, June 2023, where exactly do you hope the Zone is at?
June 2023?
Yeah. 2 years.
I know that our 5-year goal is 5 million users, right?
5 million.
5 million users. So June, that year is when we'll start to work with not only the athletic program, but the entire school base, right? So our goal is first 2 years, prove it out with the athletic programs and jump into, from 441 students to 20,000 students or 10,000 students. And we've already got approached with some of those with some schools. They don't want to start with athletic. They want to start with everybody, right? So that's really our thing. But the why we're different is nobody's positioned themselves as the leader in athletics and in a niche market. You dominate that, it's an easier way to go in because you've proven within the school base. Everybody has trouble selling into higher education because it takes sometimes 12 months. We've seen anywhere from 2 to 3 months. And it's getting lower, right? So we know where success rate, we know our hotbed, we know the business, we understand our business, we understand what we're trying to do, and we understand where we want to go.
Now, how do you guys see, I'm sure it's a conversation you have, and this kind of goes back to like the retention thing, but more, how do you like keep, especially in this day and age, everything is about kind of hype and buzz around things. How do you guys keep pushing and creating the app so that, the person who's going to be a student athlete at Stony Brook now in 5 years still wants to use the zone every day as, their main, even when they're not a student athlete anymore, as their main app to keep them in check mentally?
Nah. I'm trying to see if I'm not giving away a secret sauce. So we when we partner with schools, there's a wellness committee that we create within their schools. So it's like a number of student athletes that monthly we have conversations with.
Okay.
What's new? What's going on in their daily lives? What do you guys need? What is causing the stresses? Screw the app. What's actually in your lives that's impacting you?
Right.
We learn and we learn and we learn. We don't build the features, they do.
Gotcha.
And that's what we've consistently done. That's why we know that when the kids go in there, the engagement is higher. Because we listen to them, and when we listen to them, we know that what they go through, we know their day-to-days, we know how it's changing, we know where they're going. And not only the seniors, the juniors, the freshmen, all of them, right? Then we talk to the staff. How is this impacting you? Well, how are you solving this? They said they're going through this. What are you doing? And now we compile those notes, and we're like, this is the reason. These are the outlets. So you create this, it makes his life better, it makes her life better. Boom, connect, done. And then we test it out. It did work. This is the KPIs. It said it worked, launch it.
So from your interactions with, whether it be investors or schools or whatever it is, from what you're saying, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that all these big, I don't want to call them, all these big groups are very interested in this idea. Like they're buying into your idea.
Yeah, we've had AD tell us, is it a conflict of interest if I want to invest, right?
Wow.
You guys are going to change the landscape. Think about it. We didn't have a product. The commissioner of the America East, who just actually left a couple days ago, Amy Hutchhausen, believed in us and said, I want to partner with you guys and give this opportunity to our member school. That was our first partner.
Wow.
On an idea.
Wow.
In September of 2020, when we were still trying to figure out the wireframes. We knew where we wanted to go, but we was figuring out the wireframes. So, yes, the space is crowded, but how we're attacking it,
right,
it's very, very, if you see, sometime I'll take you through our roadmap and what the technology it does. Is very, very nitpicky and very simple and accessible. And we understand, because the thing that myself, Eric did, we didn't initially go out with therapists to build it out. We used our experience and was like, all right, us being athletes, what would we have wanted? What would have annoyed us? What would we not use?
Right.
And then we brought them on to now refine it and make it like, yeah, this works, this doesn't work. And then we pushed it like, is this legally doesn't work? Why this doesn't work? And it made sense. So, yeah.
What do you do on the days where you get down about work, or if those days come?
No.
Never?
What? It always comes. I think when you're operating something and you want to succeed, 99% of those days are like that.
So how do you personally overcome them?
Beethoven, Miles Davis, Coltrane, Sade. Literally, I'll sit down on my chaise, close the lights. I'll play a symphony or I'll play jazz. Jazz music gets like that's my favorite music, right? And I'll just sit there, and I'll be exactly where I'm at, and I'll just be there, and I'll start to listen. Recently my mom decided to come over to my house and plant a garden, and I thought it was the dumbest thing. Now I'm over here watering it, and that's helping me, right?
Yeah.
So it's things that I would have never thought. Working out, obviously, going to get a workout, but that works to a point because now you start to like compensate and try to like take it all out in the workout, where you're just trying to take it out. So yeah, the music, the softness of the music, Ella Fitzgerald, like Billie Holiday, like I go down a list of what gets me through it, but those jazz music for sure.
If I told the 7-year-old Ivan coming from Cameroon that one day he'd have a company that would deal with mental health, what would he have told me?
Keep going. I have this saying where I don't owe everybody, every human in Cameroon anything, but I owe the country everything. I if you see the kids from back home, if they gave me the opportunity to come here and do something, I gotta make sure that, they see something that they can go further in, right? So everything, all my dreams and things that I want to get accomplished, there's a lot of that in my mind. So I knew it. My dad's ambassador, and, he's reached the epitome of his dreams, and the reason why he always pushed me was because he's seen it. He's seen it, and I've seen it too, and I kind of know it. It's just sometimes stressful, right? Because I always outgrown situations so fast. I always knew where I needed to be, and I always was trying to do a lot. So a lot of this doesn't come as a surprise because I put in the work. So it's just like that 7-year-old probably say keep going because it was always embedded, kind of per se. And I don't think it's arrogance. I just think that it's a lot of confidence, and it's something that keeps me going and keeps me pushing for sure.
Now, you told us the 5-year plan. What's the 10-year plan? Have you thought of that?
Yeah. I do plan on the exit strategy is and I have 2 companies that we're actually in conversation with if we exit, and there's a rightful reason why I want to go down that route, in the sense of they sit in a place where this can really change the landscape for parents, education, and the students, right? Don't want to name the companies, but the next thing after that for me is it's 3 things that I really care about. In-home design, so like not in-home, community design, because like I told you about the Bronx looking totally different. I always walk around and I'm like, man, there's so many kids that are struggling from that because they can't see, so you can't really think big, and you don't have the foresight. You're not allowed that. So get into that. Angel invest. I want to put in, like when I get there, $1 million a year to invest into Black entrepreneurs, just angel and within ideas that I think could push the world forward, social impact ideas. So those 2 things. And the third thing is sommelier. So I love wine. And I love wine because I love to host people. So I think that those fruits and a lot of things, the chemicals, things that got to go along with it, it drives a great experience. And then coach kids, be a coach. So those are the 4 things for me. When you think about 10 years, I want to have the ability to kind of set myself, and it's interesting because I could do all 4. I could literally do all 4 at the same time, So, but the zone right here for me is something that it's something I care deeply about, and for me to pass it off after 5 to 6 years has to be a company that really cares about the same things and wants to do it right, and can impact it at a bigger place, right? And who knows, maybe I'll stay on, right? It just has to. A lot of things has to work out, but right now my total focus is each kid that's utilizing it, how do we help them? How do we help them? How do we make sure that parents feel secure that their kids have something in the school? That schools that are undermined and understaffed, that can't hire staff, feels like, man, each of our freshmen that come in, they have some type of support that before it gets to us as triage and they can feel like, all right, I don't need to go to them, I have it. Or, okay, now if it's escalated, they can, easily connect. So those are the things that every day I wake up, I think about.
Beautiful. Well, first of all, where can people find your socials, anything the zone related? Plug it away so that they can.
Right. My social is at Ivan, IVAN, Tchatchouwo, TCHATCHOUWO on Instagram. Same thing on Twitter. The zone is at ITSTHEZONE, at It's the Zone on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So, yeah, check us out, support, show love. Because
how can people support these days?
I think the best way you can do is share the information that we post. We post very targeted information to help people that's not even in the app. Learn how to get access to care, learn what care is, learn what they're potentially going through, give tips. So we definitely sharing and following definitely can help us go a long way as we as a society plan to attack the stigma, right? Because you never know what your friends may be going through. So, yeah.
Ivan, it was really a pleasure to have you on my show. The work you're doing is fantastic and honestly very inspiring to me, and I'm sure a lot of the people listening out there to know that there are great people like yourself and Eric and everybody that works at the Zone, trying to put together those resources and ultimately at the end of the day, help people and kind of make the world a better place. So I thank you for that, and I'm excited to see all that you're going to do on a personal level, what the Zone will become, and if there's anything I can ever do, you always let me know. But thank you.
Oh, man, I appreciate you. Love the platform, man. Thank you. Keep going.
Perfect.
All right.
Boom. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram at felix.levine, and if you have something to say, please leave a comment.